Captain Ryland Varick sat in the cockpit of his ship, the Starfleet Voyager, scanning the vast emptiness of the asteroid belt. The stars shimmered coldly beyond the reinforced glass, and the constant hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the otherwise silent void. Ryland had flown through this sector countless times, but today the sensors picked up something unusual. A faint distress signal, weak but persistent, echoed through the ship's communication systems. It was irregular, almost as if it were being sent in fragments. Ryland leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "A distress pod," he muttered to himself, his voice rough from years of space travel. "And it's close. Too close to the belt for comfort." He adjusted the controls and veered the ship toward the source, weaving between jagged asteroids with practiced ease. His hands moved quickly, almost instinctively, the result of years spent navigating dangerous territories. Space wasn't forgiving, and Ryland had learned early that hesitation could mean death. As he approached, a small, silver escape pod came into view, battered and spinning slowly in the zero-gravity void. Smoke hissed from a vent on its side. Ryland's heart quickened. "Someone's in trouble," he said, gripping the controls tighter. He activated the tractor beam, carefully pulling the pod closer. The fragile metal rattled under the strain, groaning as if it might collapse at any moment. He muttered a low curse and adjusted the beam's power, willing it to hold. The pod floated alongside the Starfleet Voyager, and Ryland opened the airlock. He stepped in cautiously, scanning the small interior. A figure slumped in the corner caught his attention immediately. A young woman barely conscious, her suit scratched and scorched in places. Her helmet was cracked and her breathing was uneven. She clutched a small, ornate pendant close to her chest, as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to life. Ryland knelt beside her, checking her vitals. "You're going to be okay," he said, though he didn't know if it was true. He gently lifted her into his arms, careful not to hurt her further. She whimpered softly but did not resist. "Easy now, you're safe." Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a striking green color that seemed almost too vivid for the dim light of the pod. For a moment, Ryland was caught off guard by the intensity of her gaze. She studied him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Who are you?" she asked weakly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Captain Ryland Varick," he replied. "I found you in that pod. You're safe now. Can you tell me your name?" She hesitated, glancing down at her pendant. "Aria," she said finally, almost reluctantly. "Aria, all right. We'll get you to the ship and patch you up." He carefully carried her back to the Starfleet Voyager, his mind racing. Something about her felt different. Not just her appearance, but the calmness with which she handled herself despite the obvious danger she had just survived. Ryland had seen fear many times in space travelers, but Aria seemed to have a controlled strength that was unusual. Once aboard, he guided her to the medical bay. He activated the auto-healing units and watched as soft blue light bathed her body. Cuts and burns began to close, and her breathing steadied. She watched the process quietly, almost with a sense of wonder, but said nothing. Ryland, respecting her silence, stepped back. "Do you know who attacked you?" he asked, trying to break the tension. Aria shook her head. I don't know. One moment I was on my transport, the next they were everywhere. Pirates, I think. I barely escaped." "Pirates," Ryland muttered under his breath. That made sense. The outer colonies were rife with pirate activity, and many wealthy travelers had fallen victim. But something about her story didn't fully add up. She mentioned transport, but her knowledge of starship systems was far beyond that of an average passenger. "Your ship, you know how to operate it?" he asked cautiously. I know enough to survive," she replied, her voice steady. "Not much more." Ryland studied her carefully. There was something about the way she spoke, the confidence in her tone. Not a trace of panic, not even a hint of desperation, yet she had been alone and hunted in space. Most people would have broken down. He found himself admiring her resilience. Over the next few hours, Ryland piloted the Starfleet Voyager through the asteroid belt, keeping a vigilant eye on the sensors. The pirates who had attacked her could still be tracking her, and Ryland wasn't willing to take any chances. Aria sat quietly in the corner of the cockpit, observing the controls, occasionally offering insights that surprised him. She suggested a maneuver to avoid a particularly dangerous cluster of asteroids, and Ryland followed her advice. The ship tilted smoothly, gliding past the obstacles without a scratch. "You really know your way around a ship," Ryland said, impressed. Aria smiled faintly, almost embarrassed. "I had to learn fast. Survival isn't easy in these sectors." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. A red warning light flashed on the console. Ryland's hands moved quickly over the controls. Sensors detect multiple ships approaching. They're not far behind. Arya's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't panic. We need to move fast. They won't expect a sudden course change through the magnetic storm on the nearby moon. Ryland nodded. You're right, strap in. The ship shook as it dove toward the storm. Lightning-like electrical discharges crackled across the surface of the moon below, and magnetic interference played havoc with the ship's instruments. Ryland gritted his teeth, maneuvering with precision, while Arya pointed out hazards and calculated vectors with uncanny accuracy. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to admire her courage. Even in the face of imminent danger, she remained composed. He realized he was not just protecting a stranger. He was protecting someone who inspired him to act faster, think sharper, and care more than he normally allowed himself to in the vast emptiness of space. By the time they emerged from the storm, the pirate ships were far behind. Ryland exhaled deeply, wiping the sweat from his brow. That was close, he said, his voice tinged with relief. Arya looked at him, a faint smile playing on her lips. Thanks, I would have been done for without you. You don't need to thank me, Ryland said gruffly, though a warmth spread in his chest. I protect people, that's what I do. For the next few days, Ryland kept Arya on board, trying to help her regain strength while navigating safely toward a neutral station. During that time, he learned more about her skills, how she could read star maps, repair minor ship malfunctions, and anticipate dangers before they occurred. She was not just a survivor, she was extraordinary. Despite the growing connection between them, Arya remained secretive about her past. She deflected questions with vague answers, sometimes laughing them off, sometimes changing the topic. Ryland, while curious, respected her boundaries. He sensed that whatever she was hiding was dangerous but also vital. Late one evening, as they watched the stars drift past the cockpit window, Ryland broke the silence. Arya, I need to know who you really are. You're not just some passenger caught in the wrong place. You have a presence about you, a strength. Arya hesitated, fingers tightening around her pendant. I'm just someone trying to survive, she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of sadness and determination. That's all. Ryland studied her, trying to read between the lines. He had met many people in his life, smugglers, traders, explorers, and fugitives. None had moved him like this woman. Something in her eyes told him that she carried more than just the burden of survival. She carried secrets that could change everything. As the Starfleet Voyager glided silently through space, Ryland made a quiet promise to himself. No matter what it took, he would keep her safe. He didn't yet know why, but instinct and honor demanded it. He was her shield, whether she realized it or not. And as Arya rested, finally allowing herself to sleep, clutching her pendant tightly, Ryland stayed awake, watching the stars, knowing that their journey had only just begun. Something larger was at play, something that neither of them could fully understand yet. But one thing was certain. In the endless expanse of space, he would protect her, no matter the cost. Little did he know that the woman he was protecting was far more than a survivor of a pirate attack. She was royalty, a member of the core worlds, running from assassins who would stop at nothing to eliminate her. And soon, the truth would come crashing down around them, testing every bond, every choice, and every ounce of courage Ryland possessed. For now, however, the Starfleet Voyager sailed through the void, a small haven in the cold emptiness of space, carrying two souls bound by circumstance, trust, and the unspoken understanding that danger was always just a heartbeat away. The Starfleet Voyager drifted through the outer rim of the Karen sector, a place where danger seemed as constant as the stars themselves. Captain Ryland Varick kept a steady hand on the controls, though his mind was increasingly focused on the mysterious passenger who had claimed the name Arya. She had remained quiet for most of the trip, observing the instruments and occasionally offering advice that surprised him with its precision. It had been 2 days since they had escaped the asteroid storm, and Ryland was beginning to notice patterns in her behavior. She moved with careful grace through the ship, always alert, always scanning, as though she expected danger at every corner. Yet she never panicked, never demanded help beyond what was necessary. Her composure was uncanny, and Ryland found himself both impressed and unsettled. Arya, he said one morning as they approached the small mining outpost of Viral Station, you've been quiet. Do you have any idea who's after you? Anything at all? Arya hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her pendant as she looked away. I can't say much, she admitted softly. It's complicated, they want me gone. If they catch me, things will be bad for many people. Rylan frowned, trying to read her words. He wanted to push, to demand the truth, but something in her expression stopped him. She wasn't lying outright, but she was protecting something, someone, maybe even an entire world. And yet he could sense no arrogance, no pretension. She was a survivor, cautious and intelligent, carrying burdens that were far beyond his understanding. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's alarm system. A red light flashed across the console. Multiple contacts, Rylan said immediately, scanning the readouts. Small fighters moving fast, approaching from the sector's edge. They've found us. Arya's eyes sharpened. Pirates, they've been following us. Rylan nodded grimly. They underestimated me once. They won't again. The Starfire Voyager swerved through the asteroid field with practiced precision, engines humming under stress. Arya leaned over his shoulder, pointing out weak spots in the oncoming fighters' formation. Her suggestions were precise, almost instinctive. Rylan couldn't deny that her knowledge of tactical maneuvers was unusual for someone who claimed to be a civilian. As lasers streaked past them, he realized the woman he had rescued was more than she appeared. And yet, he felt an undeniable sense of duty to keep her safe. Protecting Arya had become more than a moral obligation. It was personal. Hours passed in tense maneuvering. The pirates were persistent, following them across the sector, but Rylan's experience kept the ship just out of reach. Finally, under Arya's guidance, he executed a sudden drop into a nearby nebula cloud. The dense gas shielded them from sensors and weapons alike, and for the first time in days, the ship felt still. Rylan exhaled slowly, leaning back in his seat. "That should buy us some time," he said, glancing at Arya. She nodded, though her expression remained unreadable. "They'll keep searching. They won't give up easily." Silence fell between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Rylan's thoughts drifted to the woman beside him. He had always been solitary, relying only on himself and his ship. Yet Arya's presence had changed something within him. There was a warmth he hadn't felt in years, a sense of connection he didn't fully understand. He found himself watching her quietly, noticing the way she relaxed slightly when the danger passed, the faint way her lips curved when she thought no one was looking. "What's that pendant?" he asked suddenly, pointing to the small object she always clutched. Arya's fingers tightened around it. "It's nothing," she said softly, "just a keepsake." Rylan didn't press further, sensing her discomfort. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that the pendant held significance far beyond a simple memento. Something about her seemed tied to it, a silent promise or memory she carried with her like armor. The next few days were tense but uneventful. Rylan kept the ship on a careful course, avoiding main routes and sticking to less charted paths. Arya assisted when necessary, but mostly stayed in the observation deck, watching the stars drift by. Sometimes she would hum quietly, a soft melody that seemed almost nostalgic, like a memory of home. One evening, as Rylan adjusted the ship's course, Arya approached him cautiously. "Captain, I can help more," she said, her voice steady but tinged with hesitation. He looked up, surprised. "How do you mean?" "I know navigation patterns, safe routes, ways to evade pursuit," she explained. "I learned during my travels. It's not much, but it can keep us ahead of them." Rylan studied her. She had not boasted, she had offered help quietly and earnestly. It was the kind of selflessness he respected. "All right," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. "I could use an extra pair of eyes." Together, they plotted a course through a series of hidden wormholes, a daring plan that would place them light years ahead of their pursuers. As Arya worked alongside him, Rylan noticed how quickly she adapted to the ship's systems, understanding its intricacies almost instinctively. He couldn't explain it, but there was a sense of grace in her movements, a rhythm that made her seem untouchable in moments of crisis. That night, Rylan couldn't sleep. He sat in the cockpit, staring out at the black expanse of space, Arya's soft breathing echoing from the observation deck. He thought about the journey that had begun with a simple act of rescue and had grown into something far more complex. He was protecting a stranger, yes, but there was more at stake now, something he could feel but not yet name. The next morning, the ship's sensors picked up another signal. This one was faint, almost imperceptible, but it carried a sense of urgency. Rylan frowned. "Another distress call?" he muttered. "Not likely too precise." Arya moved beside him, scanning the readouts. "It's close," she said, her voice steady but alert. "Someone is trying to communicate. They know where we are." Ryland's hand hovered over the controls. "Pirates." Arya shook her head. "Not pirates, something else. Someone organized, careful. They know what they want." Ryland's gut tightened. He had dealt with organized groups before, but rarely had he encountered anyone with the ability to track a ship so precisely across uncharted space. "We need to be ready," he said, his voice low. "If they're coming for you, Arya, we won't have much warning." Arya's expression softened, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. "I know," she whispered. Hours passed as the Starfgear Voyager moved cautiously through the void. Ryland kept the ship on high alert, scanning every readout, monitoring every anomaly. He noticed that Arya seemed to anticipate danger before it happened, warning him just in time to avoid hazards that even his trained eyes almost missed. During a rare moment of calm, Arya spoke quietly. "Captain, why do you protect me?" Ryland was taken aback. He didn't expect the question. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said honestly. "Because no one should face danger alone." She looked at him, studying his expression. "Even without knowing who I am?" He nodded, meeting her gaze. "Especially without knowing. Titles and names don't matter out here. Actions do. Courage matters. Life matters." There was a long silence between them, broken only by the soft hum of the ship's engines. Arya's eyes softened, and for a moment, Ryland thought he saw a flicker of relief in her expression, as if she had been carrying the weight of the world alone and was now allowed to share it with someone she trusted. Later, as they approached the edge of a nearby system, the Starfgear Voyager encountered a patrol drone. Its sensors locked onto the ship immediately, and Ryland knew it was a scout sent by someone intelligent, someone organized. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," he instructed. "This isn't random." Arya leaned over, her hands flying across the controls. "We can outsmart it," she said confidently. "If we time it right, we can lose it in the asteroid cluster ahead." Ryland allowed himself a small smile. He had come to rely on her intuition and intelligence, even if he didn't yet understand its source. Together, they navigated the dense asteroid field, weaving between enormous rocks, using shadows and angles to hide from the drone's sensors. The ship shook, but it held together, and finally the drone lost their trail. As calm returned, Ryland exhaled and leaned back. "You're incredible," he admitted, his voice carrying respect and awe. Arya looked at him, her gaze steady but modest. "I've had to be," she said simply. That night, Ryland reflected on everything that had happened since rescuing her. Pirates, drones, secret signals. This was far more than a simple rescue mission. The more he learned about Arya, the more he realized that she was someone extraordinary, someone the universe wanted for reasons he didn't yet understand. And still, he had no idea of the truth that lay hidden behind her calm demeanor, her intelligence, and her quiet courage. For now, Ryland Varric had a clear purpose: protect Arya. The Starfgear Voyager sailed silently into the unknown, carrying two travelers bound together by fate, each relying on the other in a universe filled with unseen threats. And though Ryland did not yet know her true identity, he felt it in his heart. Arya was special. Someone worth shielding from danger, no matter the cost. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the journey ahead promised peril, discovery, and a bond neither of them fully understood. Ryland didn't know what awaited them, but one thing was certain. Together, they would face whatever came next, and he would shield her through it all. The Starfgear Voyager had been traveling through a less charted sector for almost a week, and Captain Ryland Varric felt a strange mix of relief and unease. They had managed to evade the pirates and the drones that had pursued them relentlessly, but the quiet made him uneasy. Danger, Ryland knew, was rarely gone for good. It was only waiting, hidden until the right moment. Arya remained mostly silent during their journey, observing the stars from the observation deck, her hands clasped around the small pendant she refused to let out of her sight. Ryland watched her occasionally, curious. Something about her quiet intensity made him feel protective, as though shielding her was the most important duty he had ever undertaken. He didn't yet know why, but the feeling was undeniable. Their calm ended abruptly when the ship's alarms blared. Red lights flashed across the cockpit and warning signals echoed through the vessel. Ryland's eyes scanned the readouts immediately. Multiple fighters approaching, fast, heavily armed. His hands moved swiftly across the controls, taking evasive action. "Get ready, Arya." They found us again. Arya stood beside him, steady and unflinching. They're organized, she said, pointing to the incoming formation. Not random pirates. Someone knows exactly where we are. We can't outrun them forever. We need to fight smart. Rylan nodded, gripping the controls. The fighters closed in rapidly, weapons charging. The first volley of lasers streaked past, narrowly missing the ship's hull. Rylan swore under his breath. Brace yourself. This isn't going to be easy. Arya's voice was calm but firm. Follow my lead. I'll guide you through their weak points. We can escape if we work together. For the next several minutes, Rylan and Arya maneuvered the ship in perfect synchronization. She pointed out openings in the enemy formation, calculated angles of attack, and suggested rapid course adjustments that kept the Starfleet Voyager just out of reach. Rylan could hardly believe her insight. She seemed to anticipate the fighters, every move, almost as if she had fought them before. The final wave of lasers exploded dangerously close to the hull, sending the ship into a violent spin. Rylan gritted his teeth, regaining control, and with Arya's guidance, they slipped through a narrow asteroid passage. The pursuing fighters were caught momentarily off guard, and Rylan seized the chance to break into a hidden sector of the nebula cloud. They emerged on the other side, battered but intact. Rylan exhaled deeply, wiping sweat from his brow. That was too close, he muttered. Arya's expression was calm, almost serene. We made it, she said softly, for now. They drifted in silence for a while, the tension slowly easing. Rylan glanced at Arya. You're remarkable, he said, his voice quieter than usual. I don't know who you really are, but you've saved us more than once. She smiled faintly, but her eyes held a shadow of sadness. I've had to learn fast, she admitted. Life in my previous world wasn't easy. You survive or you don't. Rylan studied her closely. There was something in the way she said it, a weight in her words, as if she carried more than just personal danger, something far greater. He didn't yet understand, but instinct told him she was extraordinary in ways that went beyond skill or courage. As the ship entered a quieter region, Rylan allowed himself a rare moment of rest. Arya moved to the observation deck, her eyes scanning the stars. He followed, standing behind her silently, noticing the way her green eyes reflected the starlight. She turned slightly and smiled. Do you ever sleep, Captain? She asked. Not well, he admitted. Too much to think about, too many responsibilities. She nodded, understanding. I know that feeling, she said quietly. Even when you're tired, the danger never stops. Their quiet moment was shattered by a sudden jolt. The ship's lights flickered and Rylan's stomach dropped. Hull breach in the lower deck, he shouted. Arya, stay here. No, she insisted, moving toward the doorway. I can help. I know how to stabilize it. Rylan hesitated but saw the determination in her eyes. She was capable and he trusted her instincts. All right, but stay close to me, he said, and they rushed to the damaged section together. The lower deck was in chaos. Sparks flew from exposed wiring and the smell of scorched metal filled the air. Rylan quickly assessed the situation. We need to seal the breach manually, he said, grabbing a toolkit. Arya moved with precision, following his instructions while suggesting improvements. Her knowledge of the ship's systems went far beyond what any ordinary passenger could know. Together, they worked efficiently, sealing the breach and rerouting power to stabilize the hull. By the time the emergency lights returned to normal, they were both breathing heavily, but the ship was secure. Rylan looked at her, a mix of admiration and curiosity in his eyes. How do you know all this? He asked, genuinely perplexed. She hesitated, touching the pendant she always wore. I had to learn, she said simply. Some of us are born into situations where survival isn't optional. You either know how to protect yourself or you die. Rylan didn't press further. Her words hinted at a life filled with danger, responsibility, and perhaps more than he could comprehend. He felt a growing respect, and something deeper, a protective instinct he had never felt so strongly before. The next day, as the Starfleet Voyager approached a small neutral station, Rylan prepared for what he hoped would be a safe docking. But as they drew near, he noticed unusual movement on the sensors. Small ships moved in formation, not registered by any official database. His instincts screamed that they were being watched. Arya, he said, eyes narrowing, we're not alone. Something waiting for us at the station. She studied the readouts calmly. They know where we're headed, she said. They want me, we can't go straight in. We need a distraction. Rylan nodded, trusting her judgment. I'll follow your lead. They executed a complex maneuver, weaving through the station's outskirts and creating a false signal that drew the unknown ships away. By the time they approached the docking bay, the immediate threat had dissipated, though Rylan remained cautious. Once docked, Rylan led Arya through the station's corridors to a secluded maintenance area. He couldn't shake the feeling that danger still lurked nearby. "I need to know what you're hiding, Arya," he said finally. "I don't need the details yet, but I need to know why they're after you." Arya's fingers brushed the pendant again, her eyes distant. "If I told you everything, it would put you in danger too," she admitted. "You already risk your life every day just by being with me." Rylan stepped closer, his expression firm but gentle. "I chose to protect you, Arya. Danger doesn't scare me. Losing you would. I need to know the truth, even a part of it, so I can do my job better." For a long moment she studied him, weighing her trust. Finally she spoke, her voice low and steady. "I'm not just a survivor. I have responsibilities. People who want to see me gone aren't just pirates. They're organized, powerful. If they succeed, it won't just hurt me. It could destabilize the entire region." Ryland's eyes widened. "What are you saying?" Arya met his gaze directly. "I am a target because of who I am," she admitted quietly. "I carry a position, a title that they want removed from the galaxy." Ryland felt a rush of realization, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he felt a renewed sense of duty. "Then I'll make sure they don't get you," he said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Her eyes softened, a flicker of relief passing over her face. "You don't understand fully," she whispered. "But thank you." Before they could speak further, the station's alarms blared. Intruders had been detected in the docking bay. Ryland's grip tightened on the nearest rail. "Get ready, Arya, this is it. They've found us." Together, they moved swiftly through the corridors, avoiding detection. Arya's knowledge of hidden paths and maintenance routes allowed them to stay one step ahead of the intruders. Yet Ryland could feel the tension building. This wasn't a simple chase. The attackers were precise, deliberate, and dangerous. Finally, they reached a secluded section near the station's outer hull. Ryland blocked the doorway while Arya prepared a makeshift defensive system using nearby equipment. When the intruders arrived, they were met with a carefully timed countermeasure that forced them back, giving Ryland and Arya the chance to escape through an emergency airlock. As they floated in the station's maintenance bay, Ryland glanced at her. "Arya, whatever you are, whoever you are, I won't let them take you," he said, his voice filled with determination. She looked at him, her expression softening. "You don't know what you're getting into," she warned, "but I trust you." Ryland smiled faintly, feeling a bond stronger than he had ever known. In the cold vastness of space, he had found a reason to fight, a reason to protect someone more than himself. And though the challenges ahead were uncertain, one thing was clear. He would shield her from danger, no matter the cost. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the Starfire Voyager drifted silently through the void, carrying two souls bound together by trust, courage, and the unspoken promise that they would face whatever came next. Side by side, the Starfire Voyager glided through the shadowed corridors of space, the stars streaking past in long, cold lines. Captain Ryland Varric felt a tight knot of anticipation in his chest. Every sensor blinked cautiously, every instrument hummed with alert. They had survived pirate ambushes, drones, and unknown attackers, but now the true challenge loomed. The forces that hunted Arya were organized, powerful, and relentless. Arya stood beside him, calm yet focused. The revelation of her identity as Princess Arya Lysandra of the Core Worlds weighed on both of them. Ryland had learned the truth only recently, and though it had shocked him, it had not shaken his determination. He would protect her, no matter the cost. "They know I'm here," Arya said softly, her fingers brushing her pendant. "The Council, the rivals, they won't stop until they remove me. This is it, Captain, we face them together." Ryland met her gaze. "I've got you. We plan, we fight, we survive. You're not alone." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, the weight of responsibility lifted from her shoulders. Ryland's unwavering resolve gave her courage she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Their plan was simple but dangerous. Arya's knowledge of her world's political network allowed them to anticipate the attacker's strategy. Ryland would command the ship and handle the combat maneuvers, while Arya coordinated from the inside, using the station's communications and sensor arrays to mislead their enemies. As they approached the pirate stronghold, Ryland's hands moved over the controls with precision. "Stay close," he instructed. Once we enter, there's no turning back. The stronghold loomed ahead, a massive structure orbiting a barren moon, armed with laser turrets and shielded docking bays. The attackers had underestimated the combination of Ryland's tactical genius and Arya's insider knowledge. The plan depended on timing, stealth, and absolute trust between them. Arya tapped into the stronghold's network, sending false signals to the defensive systems. "We'll create a blind spot here," she instructed, her fingers flying over the holographic display. "You can slip in, but don't linger." Ryland nodded. "Understood, let's go." The Starfare Voyager slipped through the shields, weaving past turrets that tracked them with deadly precision. Lasers streaked past the hull, forcing Ryland to make rapid adjustments. Arya's calculations guided him through narrow corridors and dangerous angles, avoiding the worst of the fire. As they penetrated deeper into the stronghold, Ryland activated the ship's auxiliary systems to disable key defenses temporarily. Arya monitored the enemy communications, feeding him real-time updates. Their synergy was flawless, each relied on the other instinctively. Suddenly, a massive fighter swooped down from the upper bay, blocking their path. Ryland's jaw tightened. "Arya, brace yourself. This one's coming in fast." Arya's hands moved across the controls, coordinating the station's security systems to create a temporary shield corridor. "Now, Captain, through the gap!" Ryland pushed the engines to maximum, the Starfare Voyager lurching forward with a roar. The fighter fired, but their timing was perfect. They slipped past, the laser hitting empty space. Ryland let out a controlled breath, his eyes flicking to Arya. "Perfect timing, couldn't have done it without you," she smiled faintly. "Neither could I without you." The path ahead opened into the stronghold's central chamber, where the leaders of the attack awaited. Ryland and Arya prepared for the confrontation. The leaders, a group of hardened mercenaries and rogue politicians, had underestimated the determination of a captain and a princess willing to fight side by side. Arya activated the ship's communication array. Her voice echoed through the chamber, commanding authority. "I am Princess Arya Lysandra of the Core Worlds. You will stand down or face the consequences. Any attack on me is an attack on the entire sector. Leave now or you will be destroyed." The room was silent for a tense moment. The leaders, momentarily stunned, quickly recovered. One of them, a tall man with a scarred face, sneered. "You think we'll obey a child hiding in a ship?" Arya's eyes narrowed. "I am no child," she said firmly, "and this is no bluff." Ryland readied the ship, the weapons systems powered and aimed. He glanced at Arya. "We've got their attention. Brace yourself." The battle erupted suddenly. Lasers cut through the chamber, shields flared, and the stronghold shuddered under the combined assault of Ryland's tactical precision and Arya's insider knowledge. She directed countermeasures, disabled key turrets, and exploited blind spots. Ryland piloted the Starfare Voyager with skill that only years of experience could provide, dodging deadly fire and striking with calculated precision. Amidst the chaos, one of the leaders fired a devastating laser directly at Arya's position. Ryland's instincts kicked in. Without hesitation, he maneuvered the ship between the blast and her. The laser struck the hull, sending a shockwave through the Starfare Voyager. Ryland gritted his teeth, maintaining control as alarms blared. Arya watched in shock and awe. "Captain," she whispered. "I've got you," Ryland replied, his voice steady despite the danger. "Always." The ship shuddered again as another laser hit the hull, but Ryland's maneuvering kept them alive. Arya directed the final counterstrike, using the stronghold's own systems against the attackers. Lasers, shields, and hacking sequences combined in a flawless execution. The leaders were overwhelmed, their forces scattered, and the stronghold's defenses fell. Ryland and Arya emerged victorious, the silence of space returning as the stronghold's systems shut down. Ryland exhaled deeply, turning to Arya. "We did it," he said, relief washing over him. Arya smiled, her green eyes shining. "Yes, together." They floated for a moment, letting the adrenaline fade. The battle had been won, but Ryland knew it was only a step in the larger conflict. Still, for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to feel hope. Arya approached him, her expression softening. "You risked everything to protect me," she said quietly. "Even before you knew who I was, that means more than I can say." Ryland shrugged, though a faint smile tugged at his lips. "I didn't need to know. You were in danger and I couldn't stand by. That's all that mattered." Her eyes lingered on his face, and for a moment, the weight of her responsibilities seemed to lift. She realized that courage didn't require titles, and trust could be built in the most unlikely of places. Rylan had shown her that heroism was about action, heart, and loyalty, not status. In the quiet aftermath, Arya accessed her secure communication network, contacting allies and informing them of the Stronghold's defeat. Political rivals would now know that she was not only alive, but capable of defending herself with skill and courage. The core worlds would recognize the strength of their princess, and Rylan's bravery would be honored as the man who stood unwaveringly by her side. Later, as the Starfare Voyager sailed toward safer sectors, Rylan and Arya stood on the observation deck together. The stars stretched infinitely before them, each one a silent witness to the bond they had forged. "You're more than I imagined," Rylan said quietly, watching her. Arya smiled, her hand brushing against the pendant. "And you are more than anyone could expect from a protector. You didn't hesitate. You stood by me even when you didn't know who I was. That's courage beyond measure." Rylan's eyes softened. "I didn't need to know your title to know that you were worth protecting. That's all I ever needed." Arya looked at him, a new sense of trust and respect shining in her eyes. "Then we're equals," she said simply, "side by side no matter what comes next." The ship moved silently through the void, carrying two individuals whose lives had intertwined in ways neither could have predicted. They had faced danger, uncertainty, and the unknown together, and had emerged stronger because of it. Rylan had discovered that true heroism was not about knowing a person's identity. It was about the courage to act when it mattered most. Arya had learned that trust and loyalty could be found in the unlikeliest of places, and that even in the darkest times, allies could be found where least expected. As the Starfare Voyager sailed toward the next chapter of their journey, Rylan and Arya stood together, looking toward the stars, ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy would place in their path. Danger would come again, as it always did, but they were prepared. Together, they had proven that courage, loyalty, and trust were stronger than fear, stronger than power, and stronger than any threat the universe could send. And in that vast, endless expanse of space, two souls, one a seasoned protector, the other a hidden royal, had found strength in each other, forging a bond that would carry them through every trial to come. For Rylan Varric, the act of shielding her had revealed something deeper than duty. For Arya Lysandra, being protected had revealed a chance to trust, to fight, and to live freely. The universe was vast, full of unknown dangers, but they had discovered that no force was stronger than the courage and loyalty shared between them. And so the Starfare Voyager continued its journey, carrying its passengers toward the stars, toward freedom, and toward the future they would face together, side by side.